Okay, in this lesson, we're going to discuss how we use the information that we gathered in dissecting the standards to start thinking about how we teach a standard. So our objective for this lesson is to be able to plan an assessment that's aligned to a standard through looking at sample questions and gathering and creating question stems that you can use. And we're going to talk about starting with looking at sample questions, planning your instruction based on sample questions, creating question stems, how to increase cognition, and assessments. So you want to examine a variety of questions that are aligned to a skill. And you start by looking for commonalities and differences within those within those standards. You want to look for skills within skills. And you can look at things like national and state tests, district exams, or published and unit lessons. And then when you find these sample questions, you want to think about categorizing them. And categorizing them could be as simple as easy questions, medium questions, hard questions. It could mean that it's a question that matches with a paired text, or it only goes along with a single text. It might mean that it's a question that goes at the start, middle, or end of something, etc., etc. So the more that you can categorize your question stems, the more it will help you, because doing this is going to help you see more of the baseline skills that are at play, which will help you in knowing how to teach the standards, and they can even help you in determining prior knowledge and potential misconceptions and gaps that you would need to address when you teach a standard. Now that you've looked at sample questions and compared what you noticed to the skills, the concepts, and the key understandings, you can plan how to teach that standard. And the big question is to ask how you can authentically teach the skill. What are the methods that you can use to teach it? From there, you're able to connect to unit content and start planning how to connect the skills and the skill measurements through it. This is a good place to start thinking through the ways that the skill can be taught through application and less through multiple choice. So as you can see in this example, going to the IITE standard, reading standard from the SAT that I used previously, you can see how this can be applied through any kind of writing. The baseline skills of the standard are about choices of evidence. Choosing and writing about connections between a claim and evidence is higher order thinking. The final step is to curate a list of question stems. This will give you stems for your unit and for each time that you cover the standard in the future. The stems can be used whether you're creating multiple choice questions or short answer questions. In this particular example, you can see that I pulled some directly from the SAT. I created some that are more authentic and open-ended rather than multiple choice. And then finally, it's a way for students to apply it in a more highly cognitive, more rigorous way. Now that you've fully developed the idea of what goes into teaching a standard at its core, you can also think about ways to continuously push students and the skills of the standards to higher levels of cognition and rigor. And you can do this by using resources like Bloom's taxonomy and depth of knowledge to identify additional verbs and skills to teach and to push students to becoming more independent thinkers and learners. These will help you find the right ways to step away from stages of dependent learning like remembering and recalling and moving up to more independent skills like thinking strategically, analytically, and evaluatively. Now you'll be able to start designing your assessment for a standard. So first, choose a skill from a standard that you want to assess. Oftentimes, standards have a lot of connected skills. So in a single lesson, you generally are not teaching a full standard until you've already taught the basics that go along with it. And this can change from standard to standard, subject to subject, grade to grade, school to school. Then you use the stems that you put together in your assessments. This is where you want to start thinking about how to mix up how often you have multiple choice versus authentic and application-based assessments. There's a need for both, so you have to find the right balance based on your students' needs. In a single lesson assessment, you should be getting your students to address at least one and sometimes all of the following 3 questions. Can my students successfully execute the skill? So they actually do it. Can my students correctly apply the concept that I just taught them? And can my students summarize what they've learned? Now that you've created your assessment, it's time to write your learning objective before you plan the rest of your lesson. And so you would do that after you dissect your standard and after you've crafted your assessment.